Good morning. You're probably wondering why I called you all together this morning. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. It's a great pleasure for me this morning that following a national search, Georgia Tech has selected a new athletic director. He's a seasoned leader and a Georgia Tech alum and a former student athlete. Todd Stansbury comes to Georgia Tech after having served as athletic director at Oregon State for the past year and as their executive associate athletic director for 9 years. He also served as athletic director at both the University of Central Florida and East Tennessee State University. Todd Stansbury is a man who's committed to the success of student athletes both on and off the field. He was mentored by the best. He was a Georgia Tech Assistant Athletic Director for Athletics from 1988 to 1995 under Dr. Homer Rice, who developed Georgia Tech's Total Person program, a program that was designed to help student athletes achieve their full potential in all areas of their lives. It's a program that's still in use today. Throughout his career, Todd has developed student leadership programs that emulate the Total Person program created here at Georgia Tech. This program, along with the support of our coaches and athletic staff, has resulted in student athletes who not only successfully complete their education, but also give back to their community. I continue to be impressed with not only their success in the athletic arena, but with their success in the academic arena. Todd now returns to campus to guide a department that features teams in 17 NCAA Division I varsity sports. I anticipate that Todd will start sometime in late November or early December of this year. Until then, Paul Griffin will continue to serve as interim director of athletics and afterwards will assist Todd in the transition. I want to take this opportunity to thank Paul Griffin for agreeing to be Georgia Tech's interim athletic director for the second time. He'll continue as an invaluable asset during this transition. I also want to extend a special thanks to the athletic staff. This is an unexpected additional burden this morning with a football game tonight, and I appreciate all of your efforts to help make this possible. And finally, I want to thank Al Trujillo and the other members of the search committee for their outstanding guidance in evaluating candidates. The search committee early on quickly identified the key characteristics that they thought we should look for in an athletics director. This included someone who had a true passion for Georgia Tech. And Todd Stansbury not only has that passion for his alma mater, but I believe will inspire that passion in our student athletes, our coaches, our alumni, and all of the folks here in Georgia. In many ways, Todd is returning home. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management in 1984, but his affiliation with Georgia Tech started much earlier. He actually saw his first Georgia Tech football practice at 10 years old when he and his family stopped on campus while driving through Atlanta on vacation. That, he tells me, is when he first knew that he wanted to play football at Georgia Tech. He lettered as a linebacker and special teams player while at Georgia Tech from 1980 to 1984 for head coach Bill Curry. He was a third-round draft pick of the Canadian Football League's Saskatchewan Roughriders in 1984. His financial background is a tremendous resource. At Oregon State, he was part of a senior management team that raised $150 million for a football stadium expansion and construction of a sports performing center, as well as developing several career development initiatives for student athletes that again emulated the Total Person program. His global perspective, his leadership experience in athletics and development, combined with his lifelong passion for Georgia Tech, make him the ideal candidate. I believe that this is one of those rare golden moments in life where opportunity meets ambition, and we welcome Todd Stansbury home.
Well, this is a little surreal. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Peterson and the committee for giving me this great opportunity and bringing me home. I've done a number of these in the past, but you might have to bear with me through this because this is more than just another AD job. And as Dr. Peterson stated, my journey to this point started a long time ago. It's been 45 years since I first decided, one, I was going to come to Georgia Tech, which is an interesting story considering at the time I was playing hockey up in Oakville, Ontario. But before I kind of get into those kind of comments, I'd like to thank some people. And first of all, I'd like to thank my wife, Karen, who's crisscrossed this country with me a number of times in pursuit of this dream, this one right here, and has literally been my partner as we've traveled around the world, which I know some of you know the only reason we ever left Georgia Tech was because we were crazy enough to backpack around the world for 2 years. My parents are here, Marlene and Julio Houston, and they allowed me to believe in some pretty crazy dreams and never got in the way. And the fact that I was a 10-year-old hockey player from Oakville and had decided that I was going to play football at Georgia Tech, they never got in the way or tempered that dream of mine. Despite the fact that many of their friends and other people in our family basically told them they should, because I'll only be disappointed. And so I appreciate not only the support, but just the just allowing me to dream some pretty crazy dreams that a lot of them have actually come true. I'd like to thank my mother-in-law, Bea Hammond, who is here from Greenville, South Carolina, and I think is pretty excited about the game tonight. And I think about her daughter coming home, and I think she's pretty excited about Georgia Tech as well. I'd like to thank Bill Curry for showing me what the Tech way was. And at the time, of course, you're only 18 years old, and you think that this is the way they do it everywhere, and then once you leave, you find out this isn't the way they do it everywhere. There is a Tech way, and it's the right way. And for the last 20 years that I've been away from the flats, I've done everything I could to bring the Tech way to every place I've been. I want to thank Homer Rice for having the vision in the early 80s before anybody had any concern about student-athlete welfare or developing young people through athletics, and he was a true visionary, and I was a freshman his first year here. So the irony is I went through the first class of the Total Person program. At UCF and at Oregon State, we call it the Everyday Champions program. But it's basically the evolution of everything that I learned while I was here. In fact, my whole career, everything that I've done, every program that I've led, the DNA can be found here on the flats. This place had a profound impact on my life. It changed my life. And I think for that I have to thank my friend, my mentor. Some of you know him as Captain Crazy, the Big Z. He goes by a number of different names, but Scott Zulke is the young quarterback that I met on the beach in Daytona when he was a sophomore here and I was a 10-year-old kid in Canada. And because he paid attention to me and was nice to me, that's where the dream came from. And now we've been friends for 45 years, and I owe him almost everything, because the day I met him, it's one of those life-defining moments where there's a fork in the road, and this fork brought me here. I want to thank the faculty members of Georgia Tech, because they pushed me and showed me potential that I had that I didn't even know that what I could become. And specifically, I'd like to thank Dr. Phil Adler who had an incredible impact on me. And the fact that I took him for 7 classes when most people can't survive one tells you a lot about how I felt about Phil Adler. Fred Alvin, Bob Green, the faculty of the College of Management really pushed me and would not, it's the tech way. It wasn't easy, but that's part of it. And I think that's where the true value and what we learn here is that if it's worth it, you're typically going to have to work for it. I learned a lot while I was here, and I've done everything I could to take what I learned here to other places and be the evangelist of the Georgia Tech way. And what I found in my whole philosophy on intercollegiate athletics really is rooted in my own experience. Because I wanted to play a game, the faculty and the coaches here were able to push me and really help me find potential that I didn't even know I had. And that's what athletics does. At a time when zip code is the major indicator of access to college and success in college, athletics casts a wide net where we don't care what the zip code is. And what I learned is because we just want to play a game, because these young people just want to play a game, they'll do anything we ask them to do. And so it's up to us to ask them. Because all things equal, you pick a student athlete every time. And it's up to us to make them equal. So Homer Rice had the total person program. I've got the Everyday Champions program. I have a feeling it's going to revert back to the total person program. But that program is so much more than just a bunch of programs and bringing in speakers. It is where the student athlete one finds that you actually care about them, because it's more than just what they're going to do on the field or what you see across the ticker or even what they do in the classroom. I think the other thing about it is that makes it so incredibly important, and Tech found this out a long, long time ago, is that graduation is the beginning of the journey, not the end. And so our focus will be on the success of our student athletes, and of course they're going to graduate. But it's what are they doing 5 and 10 years after graduation? And if you look at what Georgia Tech graduates are doing 5 and 10 years after graduation, that is our differentiator. That is what sets us apart, and that's what we need to be, that needs to be part of our brand. And so I am so incredibly thankful to be back. This is home. This is where I found who I was, and it provided me a launch pad that has so far been a pretty good adventure. And to be back here and be able to finish my career where it started is just an incredible gift. And again, I'd like to thank Dr. Peterson for making that possible. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll open it up for questions from the media. We ask that you do please raise your hand and take a microphone, because this is being streamed live, so everybody can hear the questions go along with the answers. So questions for both Todd and Dr. Peterson this time.
How much work did the search committee have to do, since I think it appears that you were pretty much set on Todd for the job?
Well, actually, the search committee, the first thing they did, Al pulled the search committee together, I think probably within a week of Mike's announcement of his resignation, and the first thing they did was to outline the characteristics of what we were seeking in an athletic director. They met a number of times, reviewed the candidates, provided advice and guidance, so they played an integral part in the process. As you might imagine, this has moved pretty quickly. These searches get a lot of attention, and so you try to do things as quietly as possible, but we're indebted to the search committee for their efforts. We found a candidate, or an athletic director that fulfills all of the characteristics that they identified.
Questions?
Ken.
Todd, welcome. First, can you kind of describe the timeline of how this all came about?
Well, it all happened pretty quickly. Probably it all came about in, I'd say, the last 72 hours.
Well, in those 72 hours, I guess, like, how did, like, what were the steps that got you to eventually saying, I'll take the job?
Well, I'll help. We met with a number of candidates, interviewed a number of candidates, and I asked Todd if he wanted the job, and he said yes. And he said yes, and I said, we'll figure it out from there, and we have. I think we're in a great place, very pleased. I didn't have to twist his arm.
While you're working in Corvallis, obviously you're focused on OSU, but you hear about the Georgia Tech job opening. Was there ever a point prior to being contacted by Dr. Peterson that you thought, maybe it would be a move I'd like to reach out for?
Are you serious? Let's just say, because I was on the West Coast, when it became public that Georgia Tech was going to be looking for a new athletic director, around 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, my phone just started blowing up, and I thought that somebody had either died or somebody was in trouble, and of course it was that the Georgia Tech job was open. So knowing that this has always been the goal, was to eventually come back to the Flats. I was hoping that this could potentially be a possibility, but of course it was tempered because I was in a great spot, and I have a great staff, and we were doing some really, really innovative things. So it was one of those that I thought that this opportunity may present itself, and was hoping that it might, but never knew for sure.
I will just add that Gene DiFilippo was the search consultant that we used, and he and his firm, Turnkey, yeah, I'm sorry. Him and his firm at Turnkey did a great job in helping identify candidates, bring those candidates in, get them together, and move this process forward. Very pleased with Gene and his company.
Todd, you just spoke about some of the innovative things you were doing at Oregon State. What are some of the things you plan on bringing here to Georgia Tech?
Sure. Kind of in my evolution of the Total Person program and the creation of the Everyday Champions program, we started to look at that not only as obviously a support program for student athletes, but part of the central to our business, and in that started to create revenue producing programs, and one of them is called the First Round Draft Choice Program, and it's a program where we do corporate partnerships, but they're not your traditional corporate partnership. They're not a marketing partnership. They're an HR partnership. So in exchange, by being a partner, you're actually engaged in the programming of the Everyday Champions program. And in exchange for that, you have access to the best talent. And your executives are engaged in not only making sure that we're developing the skills in our student athletes that they say they want. We use the junior achievement model where their executives are actually teaching the students, and that way over 4 years you're going to know who your first round draft choices are. And it's something we started at UCF and continue to evolve at Oregon State, and that's something that I think would work perfectly in Atlanta, Georgia. Just looking at the skyline, I know there's a lot of potential partners, I think, that would be interested in the talent that we're producing.
We've heard a lot of talk about Georgia Tech trying to keep up with the Joneses in terms of facilities, staffs, in programs like Clemson, Georgia, et cetera. Will that be one of the issues you'll be addressing?
I mean, I think that it's important that your facilities are in sync with other facilities at your competitors, but I think it's also important that you're true to yourself and who you are. Of course, I'm coming from a place that's 45 miles from Eugene, Oregon. Totally different culture. And so I think what's really important is understanding who you are, what fits you, and making sure that you're providing the best facilities for your coaches and student athletes so that they can be successful. But that doesn't necessarily mean you need a waterfall in your locker room. And I think those are the things that are important as you assess what you need, is you identify what you need and what fits you, and that's what I've done both at Oregon State and UCF, and we'll continue to do that here.
Any more questions?
I know when you went back to Oregon State, I think I read that you felt like because you knew the place, there wasn't as much of a run up to being able to start running. Do you feel that at all here, or do you think that you'll need a good amount of time to kind of learn the landscape again?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit different because I've been gone for 20 years and a lot's changed, but the DNA hasn't. So I think my advantage here is going to be just understanding the culture of the Institute. But I'm not going to just assume because I've got a Georgia Tech degree on my wall that I know exactly what's going on. So I'll still have to do your typical new AD due diligence and trying to find out what's going on, ask a lot of questions, and try not to make any really stupid, rash decisions because you think you know everything. But I hope that because I understand the culture and I recognize a lot of the faces, even though they got a lot less hair and a little grayer, that I'll hopefully be able to get up and running fairly quickly.